What is up, you guys? Marty McFly coming at you, bringing you guys the spooky merch. So, if you've been watching this channel for a while, or even if you haven't, you may or may not know that Halloween is my favorite holiday. I absolutely love the fall autumnal season, and there really just is nothing better to me. But it's really hard to determine, do I love Halloween Day itself, or do I love the build-up to Halloween Day more? And I'm realizing we're in April, and April is a really challenging month. One, because the weather can be absolute garbage, or it can start really starting to be nice. I mean, in Florida, we get some cold days that are still nice, but we get a lot of rain. Allergy seasons are through the roof, and there are not a lot of things that I look forward to in the month of April, except for May. May starts to pick up. You still have really nice weather. It's a little bit warmer. There's more things to do. There's more things to celebrate. Really, the only thing I celebrate in April is that I'm halfway to Halloween and the Masters tournament. So I'm really limited on the amount of things that I look forward to in April. And that's kind of how I feel about January and February as well. It's just, you're so limited on things you can look forward to. I would say other than the resurrection of Christ and the Easter holiday and the end of Lent, you know, and the Masters and maybe a handful of other things, April's just one of those really strange months. And I was thinking, well, we're about halfway to Halloween. We're plus or minus, you know what I mean? And it's always Halloween in the Marty McFly household. I'm always constantly decorating, redecorating, changing things, buying new things, taking things out, or just even burning a pumpkin-scented candle. And April, I was like, you know what? Why don't we take things on a different note? Why don't we do 3 records, 3 books, and 3 movies that I look forward to get me into the spooky season, whether it is off season or the build up to the season. Because if you start thinking about it, we've already got pumpkin stuff in Hobby Lobby, and I know Hobby Lobby's whatever, they're not really pro Halloween, they're just pro autumn. And whatever, I mean, I'm Catholic. This is like the most heavy metal religion you could possibly think of, and I love Halloween. And if you think about the roots of the roots of everything, it's just like the roots of Halloween. I mean, depending on how you look at it, obviously, like, a lot of us who are Irish, Scottish, Welsh, or whatever, a lot of our roots are built in the Celtic upbringing, and that's where the majority of my family's from. And it's just interesting how, like, Hobby Lobby's kind of anti-Halloween, citing religious purposes. Let's just say I know they're not Catholics, because they would be completely remiss with themselves. But it's just interesting, something that has just so much history to it, and they would kind of reject it on the basis of religion. I don't know. Because I don't know if they're blaming Satanism or what they're calling it, or if it's just like this minute pagan root into either Samhain or the Celtic roots, or pagan kind of Celtic roots of Halloween. So it's just interesting that they're the first ones to put out autumnal stuff, which they already have in April, which got me excited, but they're not really pro-Halloween when it comes to the stuff they put out in their store. But then usually by now, I'm starting to look at Home. By May, At Home is starting to put out spooky stuff. Then the next ones I usually look forward to are Cracker Barrel, right in the middle of summer. Then we got Michaels and Bath & Body Works, and I can't wait for those feelings to come back. I love the build up to Halloween, but I love getting excited about decorating and looking and exploring for new things. So I feel like this is a good opportunity as any in April, when we don't have a lot of spooky stuff going on, to let's do a couple things. Let's do a 3-3-3. We're gonna go for 3 books, 3 movies, 3 records. Let's go. Now this one might seem obvious, but Ray Bradbury, The Halloween Tree, can't beat it. I do have the small paperback copy of this. It's like $5 at Barnes & Noble, but I found a hard copy of it pretty cheap from a library. It's actually got all the used library stuff in here. This actually came from the Howard Taft High School Library in San Antonio, Texas, so that's pretty rad. It's even got the old library card in it. But I wanted the hardback just because I love reading through a hardback, and this one, you could read through this whole book in about an hour. It's just a wonderful sentiment and feeling and everything that comes with the spooky season that I love. But this is astonishingly dark, with a monumentous sacrifice towards the end of the story. And it's really about the Halloween season, but also about brotherhood and sacrifice, about what these boys do in order to insert plotline here. Spoiler alert if you want to pause, but basically save their best friend. And this book is so short, I read it, at least once. I mean, honestly, I could probably read it a couple times a year and never get bored of it. But the the way his writing style is, the way he speaks to you, everything is just comfort. And you really do feel like you're sitting there amongst the leaves, the cold winds, and the banshees and the phantoms and everything that you look forward to in Halloween. I feel like you feel like you're right there. And it's just Ray Bradbury's writing style is just phenomenal. Obviously, he's a famous author of many, many other works, but this is certainly one of my favorites. So, The Halloween Tree, if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. You can read it in about an hour or two. Take some time and treat yourself. Next one. So, I guess if you want to call this a book, you want to call it a comic, graphic novel, but if you read the entire trade paperback, then we're still talking about a book, right? But Batman, The Long Halloween. This was my introduction to Batman comics as a kid. And obviously I grew up with the TV show and the movies, and I think when Batman really, really changed for me was The Long Halloween and then the 3 additional books that came out afterwards, where it's kind of like the 3 ghosts of Christmas, but it's basically like, yeah, it's Batman ghosts, but it's like, you know, a Christmas Carol style, so like the 3 ghosts of Christmas. And this was the first time where I really paid attention to Batman's weaknesses and how he's human, and him talking about, I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this to my body, or is the pain ever going to stop? And I feel like this really opened that up for me and really got me into reading Batman from a comics perspective, which of course is how it started, but I was transient. I enjoyed Batman comics, but this was the first one that really gripped me and put a hold on me where it forced me to pay attention to Batman's mortality. And, you know, he is our hero, he's our Dark Knight, but he's also not impervious. And from a Halloween perspective, this is exactly what I want from a Halloween story. Just the pumpkins, the way everything is drawn out. I think this dynamic duo of Tim Sale and Jeff Loeb created everything I would want in a Batman comic, where the action sequences are of course superb, but also the drawing and the writing style. It is so spooky. It is the perfect Halloween book, especially when you tie in with the pictures and his villains, and then the overall story, which you can see the story clearly permeates through the Christian Bale series, and that is my favorite Batman series and my favorite Batman of all time, of course, Christian Bale. The series itself means a lot to me. You know, I used to use like those training modules or whatever you want to call it, and his strength and his fearlessness, or being able to go against fear, as to get me into competitive like weightlifting and things like that. And I used his strength as just this tool to help me get stronger and better. And then of course Dark Knight Rise, just that was like the pinnacle of like, you know, standing up against your fears and fighting anyway. But I would say, as far as a spooky novel, as far as a Halloween series, this of course is the original first pressing of book 1. I have book 1, 13, and a couple others that I found through stores over time. Didn't realize this was going to catch on and be as worth as much as it is, but an exciting story, exciting series of books, and you know, you got your lucky 13, I guess you could say. But the writing style and everything, the pumpkins, the leaves, the trees, everything is so fitting for a Halloween. Of course, it's called The Long Halloween, which they came out with 2 other sequels, right? So you had Dark Victory, and of course you have The Last Halloween, which is outstanding. If you have not read either of those, please do so. Take the time and read them. They're fantastic stories. And last but not least, this is October Dreams, a celebration of Halloween. This is a compilation, I guess you could say, a anthology series of different short stories written by many, many authors. This is the second pressing of this. The first pressing of this is actually pretty expensive, but this is a wonderful anthology of Halloween stories. And right off the bat, you start with Dean Koontz' Black Pumpkin. And I feel like this trope has been done before when it comes to Black Pumpkin. However, his story was so gritty and gripping and terrifying. Think about any of the Stephen King stories, or some of these like previous stories that are anthologies where a boy makes a wish, like either he's mad at his family, mad at bullies, he makes a wish that something will come to life. Well, in the Black Pumpkin, the Black Pumpkin does come to life and just does bad things to a lot of people. But in the end, the boy has to do something in particular, and the Black Pumpkin may or may not save the boy just to spite him. So it's a crazy story, but there's so many little moments in here. There's poetry, there's short stories, there's longer stories. Some of them are engrossing into the Halloween season, and some of them are just short one-pagers that really just make you think, that end on a note when you want more. So if you have not taken time, pick any story from this, and you're going to have an interesting perspective on the Halloween season. So of course, Halloween Dreams, edited by Richard Chismar and Robert Morish. It's well worth the journey. You can find this online. There's like PDF copies of this now. You don't need to go out and go spend the money on the big one. This has been repressed, so there's other copies as well. But if you haven't taken time for this, it's well worth the time. Now on to our 3 movies. This is Cobweb. This is one of my favorite Halloween style spooky movies in the last 10 to 15 years. This movie was unfortunately plagued because when this came out, you had 2 massive summer blockbusters that were coming out at the same time as this, and this did not get the notoriety it deserved. It also came out in summer around no spooky stuff, and this was actually my last Blu-ray I ever got from Target when Target was still doing movies. At this time, I found it on the shelf, it was on sale, I picked it up, and I have not seen, basically right after this, I had not seen another movie in Target since then. It's awful, but I was so lucky I found it. If you haven't watched this and you want the feelings of the spooky season with the pumpkins, the dead leaves, the spooky house, the spooky family, and a cryptic monster that just terrifies everybody with some brutal, brutal scenes, this is the one for you. The overall premise, but it's basically just a bullied boy, misunderstood. You know, he's got 2 parents that are kind of harsh on him, and all of a sudden he starts hearing tapping and voices in the walls next to him. His parents tell him he's crazy. He gets bullied by bullies at school, and then things start to change for the boy. This bullied boy who just wants to be a kid and grow up, the voices start teaching him how to be brave, how to take back against your enemies, and it is a blast. Especially the last 30 minutes goes absolutely haywire. But if you want something to put you in the spooky season mood, it's dark, it's gritty, you got the dead leaves, the pumpkins, everything about this movie is fantastic, and for the last 30 minutes you get a great thrill ride. The monster at the end I was not expecting. I did not know what we were going to get in the last 30 minutes, but it'd be cool to see this be redone. Right now there's no plans for a sequel or a prequel. It would be cool to see something come up more of this, because I feel like the last 5 minutes of the movie ends really, really rapidly, where they almost like ran out of money and just had to end it. And I wish we had a little bit more answers at the very last 5 minutes of the movie, or at least give us an idea of how does it just end and then we don't know what's going to happen after this. But I would really love to see a prequel or a requel or something go along with this, or a sequel at this point, just to give us a little tincture more. But great flick. I would love to see them do like an action figure for the monster, because that'd be enough to creep me out. Anyway, that is Cobweb, starring Lizzie Kaplan and Anthony Starr from The Boys. A total one-off cast I was not expecting, but they do a phenomenal job. So if you're not familiar with this movie, this is the quintessential indie spooky movie. This is haunt season, not to be confused with Haunt, but along the same lines as Haunt, where it has to deal with a haunt in the Midwest, in Illinois, and they do a phenomenal job with just the classic indie feels of a horror movie, with a crazy serial killer, great masks, great props, and really intense, brutal gore and killing scenes that I was not expecting. A phenomenal soundtrack. But I think one of the things that really hits home for me about this is you want to be one of the characters, of course, until they start getting knocked off. You want to go to this haunt. You want to be a part of this haunt. You want to be a part of the characters and the actors, and you want to be a part of like their setup because of how good of a job they do. But unfortunately for them, bad things happen, with a great twist at the end. But I think one of the things that sells this is this movie, much like the one I'm about to show you, they force you to sit down and enjoy the autumn and the fall atmosphere, which not a lot of movies I feel like do, apart from the one that I'm going to teach you about next. But what I love about this is there's a couple scenes that are calm and peaceful. It's broad daylight, and you're forced to sit there and listening to the rustling of the leaves and the peace and the tranquility and the freedom that I get from the October season. Something I feel like I force myself to do every October is just to embrace the change in the weather, the rustling of the leaves, the wind, the cooling of the air, the spooky decorations. I feel like the rest of the time we're so busy, life happens, everything happens, and we don't get a lot of time to stop and smell the roses. And this time, I force myself to stop and smell the autumn leaves. And even in Florida, we still get a little bit of that. It's just North Florida. But this is the one time where I feel like I have the most freedom and I force myself to enjoy the things that I enjoy because it's such a short time. And Haunt Season does a great job of freezing the horror and giving you a break and forcing you to enjoy the autumnal atmosphere, which they do a phenomenal job with. But I think the other thing that I really enjoy with this is the free-flowing dialogue between the characters. It feels so natural. It doesn't feel forced. The acting is actually very good. They're all basically drama geeks from college and high school, and this is their job, and they have other jobs. The main character is trying to find her way. She lives out of her car, and you do feel kind of bad because it's just like she hasn't found her way yet. But she does a great job of just everything feels so free flowing between the characters. The dialogue feels natural. It doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like acting. It just feels like normal. And I feel like that really captivated me and made me enjoy the movie. There's a little bit of Gen Zms in there, Gen Alphas, whatever you want to call it, but everyone's talking about patriarchy. I was like, oh God, they're Gen Zs. But because like they're using words, I'm like, do you even know what that word means? But anyway, the movie is fantastic. It's a great thrill ride. It's scary. It bothered me at some points enough to where I was like, wow, I was not expecting that. That was brutal and enough to sink into my skin. Can't recommend it enough. Last but not least, our third movie, Halloween 4. I had to go with the classic. I mean, I could talk about Halloween 1 with the bag of leaves that John Carpenter had to make out of California in the middle of spring. I went with Halloween 4. You know why? Because this was filmed in autumn in Utah with the dead grass, the dead leaves, the farm that has already been farmed, the great vintage Halloween decorations, and the spooky atmosphere. Halloween 4, the first 5 minutes of this movie, set the stage for how I want horror movies to be in the future if it's going to be around the Halloween season. Much like how Scream 7 did with their autumnal atmosphere and the bag of leaves and the blowing wind, this movie set the stage for atmosphere for every horror movie I want to be around the Halloween season. No one has really come close to this, with the exception of the anthology series The Witching Hour, or Witching Season, my apologies, indie horror movie. Check it out on, it's a compilation anthology over on Amazon, check it out. But Halloween 4 really set the stage for what I want out of autumnal atmosphere. Not a lot of other movies have come close. Now we're down to our 3 records, Panopticon, Autumn Eternal, and I know you're thinking, oh, well, yeah, it has autumn in it, right? So, of course, it's going to be around the spooky season. I could have picked a lot of different bands and records. Most notably, I could have gone with Horror Show by Iced Earth, but I feel like most people expect that. So I wanted to pick something a little off the wall that gets me in the mood for spooky season, not because this is directly a spooky album, but this, I talk about this on my Depression Sessions, Volume 2, which just came out, and I think what they did with this, Austin Lund, one-man band, this is bluegrass and black metal mixed together with so many different instruments, some beautiful melancholic melodic moments pitched in with the harshness and inner turmoil, panic chords, dissonant chords, feelings that make you want it to end, and then with a big moment of peace at the end of many of his songs that are kind of a component of a lot of his albums when it comes to Panopticon. But this album, starting with the bluegrass note, Tamarac's Gold Returns, beautiful, gorgeous, like just bluegrass, soft, before it breaks into Northwoods, with some amazing, great melodic lead guitar moments that make me feel and express freedom, but as well as sadness and getting lost, and maybe having catharsis in your feelings and the thoughts of maybe where he's feeling, because this band's originally from Kentucky and then now he's in Minnesota, but I feel like there is a lot of spirituality and Mother Nature and just that, you know, getting lost into the autumnal season, and that I feel it with this record. And there's so many moments. There's some longer tracks that really go in, they beat you down with the dissonant chords and the tension and the stress before they finally let go, and you just feel this catharsis, this freedom, this magic that you get into this album that I feel like we get with Mother Earth itself. And that is why I picked this album for my 3 records for the spooky season. And can't be a spooky season list if we don't have something called Halloween. This is the Detroit band Halloween, not to be confused with Halloween from Germany with Kai Hansen, but Don't Meddle with Evil. This is Savatage era heavy metal, and it really captures what I love about 80s, like 80s, 90s, like I don't want to call it hair metal because that's just not really the right term. But if I'm going to go towards Savatage and Dokken, where it's metal with a high falsetto and just great guitar leads, great chugging guitar riffs, but still capturing the intense melody comes from a falsetto voice. This is this band, and this gets me into the ready for the spooky season every time I listen to it. There's a lot of tracks on here that have like the intros and outros and speeches and parts that make you feel like you're listening to a melodic horror movie, and that's how this entire album feels. You feel like you're in a melodic horror movie. This band alone should have been on the Blob like remake from the 1980s. This band should have been on their soundtrack. I would say, you know, if we're gonna go listen to like Scared to Death, Don't Meddle with Evil, Haunted, but the big one, I'll be honest with you, Wicked Witch. I mean, everything on here is great, but like I said, there's some intros, outros on here. There's more tracks if you go to the Spotify version, so there's more tracks on here to actually listen to. But Haunted is great. Don't Meddle with Evil is just a straight up Savatage riff, and it gets me in the mood for the spooky season every time. Last but not least, Long Live the King. King Diamond, Fatal Portrait. And the reason I picked this is because my favorite song on this album is in fact called Halloween. And that song is quintessential heavy metal Halloween feels and riffs across the board. And the entire album is like one giant spooky horror movie. I mean, just starting off with the candle, going into Charon. I mean, everything on here, or Charon, I guess you could say, if you know what I'm referring to. You know, we're going to talk about some Stygian stuff on here, but if we're going to go from like Candle to Charon, and then eventually the big build-up with the song Halloween, this is a phenomenal record from cover to cover. If you have not gotten into King Diamond, please do so. I mean, if you are not familiar with one of the greatest of our time, with one of the greatest lead guitarists of our time, please check out King Diamond if you're not familiar with them, or you can go start with Merciful Fate. But I've been listening to these guys since I was a little kid. I think my first King album was Them, if I'm not mistaken, which is an odd album to start with, but that's the one my brother burned for me when I was a little kid. But I would say Fatal Portrait is probably my favorite record by them, especially with this track Halloween. And this is an album I play all year long, and it definitely puts me into the spooky spirit. So that's it for me, guys. That is 3 books, 3 movies, and 3 records that get me into the spooky season, especially when we're in April and there's not a lot of spooky things going on, because normal people probably look forward to summer, but us over here in the Marty McFly household, we look forward to Halloween all year long. So burn yourself a spooky candle, get yourself some goodies, play some of these albums, read some of these books, play some and watch some of these movies. I hope you guys are doing well. Stay spooky.